Hey guys, it's Garth. How's it going? Today's Reapercast is going to be looking at actually rendering out your project. So you've finished doing all your edits, you've got everything ready to go, and you actually want a finished product. Let's look at the render dialog. So we're in a project already.
Modified. Reaper v5.40. Master. 1 music, 1 item.
You enjoy it and find it useful. So this is just the project we did in the last one where we're setting up a sidechain. Before I render this out, I actually want to just reduce the length a little bit. Back up there. Just cut it off here.
1 item added.
So just hit A to split it at that point.
2 dreams dash become.
Command right arrow to select that second item, which is the rest of the music from that track.
1 item removed.
And we'll delete that. Now let me back up about 4 seconds.
B13, B12.
Which for me is command page up, because I've got my command page up to move by 2-second increments. Okay, and I just want to fade that out. So from the point where I am, that last 4 seconds, I'm going to fade that item out. So this is not to fade out the whole project, just this particular item. As it's the only item at this part of the project, that's fine. And to fade out, I can use Command Option or Control Alt on Windows with the O key, fade out. Now there's no Asara feedback for that one, but let me just hit F12.
Shortcut help on.
And I'll do that again.
Item, fade items out from cursor.
So fade items out from cursor. And there's a corresponding keystroke, which is Command Option I or Control Option I on Windows.
Item, fade items into cursor.
Fade items into cursor. So what I've done there is split the track at the point I wanted to, and to fade it out, I've moved back a few seconds and then used the command fade items out from cursor.
2 vocal, 2 item, 1 music, 1 item. B9.
I hope you enjoy it and find it useful. So let's render this project out. Now, to bring up your render dialog, you can go through your file menu or Command Option R, which is obviously Control Alt R on Windows.
Render to file window. RC8 demo audio. Content selected. Edit text.
So it will by default give it the name of the actual project that you've saved.
Wildcards. But RC8 demo audio. Content selected. Edit.
And you can obviously change that there.
Wildcards button. Render to.
Now,
/user/Ionis/music/Reaper media/projects/RC8 demo audio /RC8 demo audio.wav.
what it's read out is the path of the project. So by default, it will save this rendered file to the actual project folder.
1 file. Dimmed button. Sample rate. 48000. Combo box. Hertz.
So obviously there's a number of options here. We can change the
48000.
sample rate of the file,
Sample rate. 48000. Hertz. Channels.
the number of channels.
Stereo. Combo box.
Currently on stereo, so obviously you can change it to a mono, or in fact, a 4 or 8 channel file as well.
Full speed offline.
Full speed offline, I would leave this one set here. Basically, what this will do is render out the file as quickly as possible. Now, the one thing with Reaper is while it's doing the render, you can't really do anything else. There is options in here where you can do an online render, so basically it'll play it back and render the file while it's playing back.
Checked. Use project sample rate for mixing and FX/synth processing.
Okay, use the project sample rate.
Resample mode if.
So resample mode if necessary.
Options. HQ 512.sync. Pop-up button.
And I've currently got that on high quality 512 sync.
Unchecked. Tracks with only mono media to mono files.
Tracks with only mono media to mono files.
Master mix. Unchecked. Dither.
Now I'm not going to go into adding dither.
Unchecked. Multi-channel tracks to multi-channel. Unchecked. Noise shaping.
Or noise shaping.
Output format. WAV. Pop-up button.
We have a pop-up button here for our format, now currently set to WAV.
Menu checkmark.
Now
WAV.
we can change this to
AIFF. Audio CDM. DDP. FLAC. MP3. Encoder by Lane Project. Press MP3. Encode. Mode. Constant bitrate. CV mode. MP3. Encoder by Lane Project. Pop.
So it's using the encoder by Lane project. So if you haven't got that installed in the correct path, when you choose MP3 here, it'll give you a button where you can go and download it and get it installed. Okay.
Mode. Constant bitrate. CBR. Pop-up button.
Whether it's a constant bit rate or
maximum bitrate / quality. Target quality. VBR.
a variable bit rate,
Target bitrate. ABR.
or an average bit rate, and
Checkmark.
so
Constant
forth.
bitrate. CBR. Lane 3.98.3 button. Quality. Dimmed. 20. Dimmed pop-up button. Approximate, dimmed. Maximum, slow, pop-up button.
Now, maximum slow, that's basically spend as much time as you like thinking about how you want to encode this in the MP3 with the target bitrate that I've set.
Bitrate, 96 kbps, pop-up button.
Currently on 96 for this
Bitrate,
one.
maximum, slow, menu checkmark, better, slower.
But we've got some options
Normal,
in here.
recommended. Fast encode. Fastest encode. Checkmark, maximum, slow.
And I'll just leave it on maximum. So basically let my computer think about encoding this as long as it likes. Just do it as well as possible.
Bitrate.
No matter which one you choose there, it will still set it to the target
96 kbps.
kilobits per second.
Menu checkmark. 112 kbps. 128. 224 kbps. 160 kbps.
Let's just set that one to 160 for now, for no particular reason other than I can.
Unchecked. Silently increment file names to avoid overwriting.
So, silently increment file names to avoid overwriting. Say I render this out, and then I make a few changes to the project and render it again, and haven't actually changed the file name. This will actually just add, a 001 to the end of the file name, and will continue to increment the file name so that you don't overwrite your old ones. Typically when I'm doing that, I want to overwrite my old files and replace them, so that's up to you. If you don't have this ticked and it's going to overwrite an existing file, it will give you a warning and let you change the file name or proceed with the overwriting of the file.
Unchecked. Add rendered items to new tracks in project.
Now this can be a handy one. So it'll automatically add the rendered file back into the project for further processing if you wish.
Open render queue button. Render one file. Default button.
And that's our default render the file, so that will actually start the render process, but I'll have a quick look at some of these other buttons.
Add to render queue button.
So we have an add to render queue as well. So rather than actually rendering the file straight away, it'll just add it to a queue. I can then go and make other changes and add those to the render queue.
Open render queue button.
And we have the open render queue, which will bring up a dialog where you can have a look through all of the renders that you've got queued up there ready to go. So with some very long projects, the render might take some time, and you might want to do that later rather than stopping what you're doing at the time to actually complete the render.
Render one. Add to render queue. Save changes and close button. Uncheck delay queued render to allow samples to load. Cancel button. Close button.
Now I'm just going to jump back up to the top here. There's a few options on this dialog that we haven't seen yet.
Minimize button. Dimmed. Render source. Master mix. Pop-up button.
So we have the source, which is currently on the master mix. So basically, this will render out what you would hear when you play back the project through your master track. This is your default setting. This is where you would normally want to render your file. You've mixed a project and you want to actually turn it into an MP3 or a WAV file or whatever. So you would leave this one set to master mix. But let's have a quick look at some of the options that are in here.
Menu checkmark. Stems. Selected tracks.
Stems. Selected tracks. So basically, you could select a number of tracks within your project, then bring up your render queue, ask it to render the stems, and it will render out each track as a stem.
Master mix plus stems.
Or you can tell it to do both, basically.
Region render matrix.
And we're not going to look into the region render matrix at this point.
Selected media items.
Oh, we have a selected media items as well.
Checkmark. Master mix.
But we're just going to take it back to master mix at this point.
Bounds. Entire project. Pop-up button.
Now, once again, entire project, but we've got some other options in here as well.
Menu checkmark. Time selection.
If you make a time selection before you start and you just want to render that time selection out, say there's a little bit of your project you want to show somebody, you can make a time selection, come in here, still render out the master mix, but just the time selection.
Project regions.
And once again, we have the regions. So you can actually go through, add markers, convert those to regions, and then it will render them out as separate files.
Custom time range.
We have a custom time range as well, so you can actually set the time range by typing in the numbers.
Checkmark. Entire project.
But we'll once again leave it on entire project.
Press checkmark. Entire project. Entire project. Pop-up button. Time bounds. Start. Dimmed. 0.00. Dimmed text.
And if you had selected the custom time range, this is where you would adjust those.
End. Dimmed. 0.27.186. Length. Dimmed. 0.27.186.
And we can see here it's 27 seconds long.
Checked tail.
Check tail.
1000. Content selected. Edit
So a
text.
second of tail. That'd be more relevant if you had, say, a reverb that was going to tail off.
1000.
And as you can see, that's a text field, so you can adjust that one there as well.
MS. Directory. Output. Edit text. Blank.
Now, this is the location where you want the file to be going.
Browse button.
and you've got to browse. If we go into this, it'll say browse file or browse location, and you can adjust where you want that file to actually go. But by default, it will go, as I mentioned earlier, into your actual project folder.
File name, RC8 demo audio, wildcards, render to /user/Ionis/.
And that's it. So let's actually render this one out.
Uncheck save changes and close button. Add to render queue button. Render one file. Default button. Rendering to file. Output file. /user MP3. Layman finished in Reaper 6.4.
Okay, so it's rendered out very quickly because it's only quite short.
Render status. Launch file button.
And we have a dialog here with a number of different options. So we have a launch file. So that will launch the file in whatever the default program is that you have for, in this case, an MP3.
Show in Finder button.
Show in Finder or Show in Explorer, I assume that says on Windows.
Close. Default button.
And close.
Show in Finder.
Let's hit Show in Finder.
Press Finder. RC8 demo audio window.
So it's put me here in the folder for this project.
RC8 demo audio.mp3. MP3 document.
And there's the file itself.
RC8 demo audio.rpp. Reaper project. RC8 media folder. 02 vocal 170820. Dreams become real _ fireworks iron.
And inside the media folder, we have the two actual files that are associated to this project.
Media for RC8.
I'm just going to jump out of there though for now. We'll come back to Reaper.
Reaper 6.4. Reaper. Close. Show in Finder. But launch file.
So at this point, we still have the launch file, Show in Finder button, and close.
Show it close.
If I just close that.
Press close. RC.
And we're back into our project. So very easy. Control Alt or Command Option R to bring up that dialog and render out your file. So I've got that copy of the project there now. So I've rendered that out to an MP3. Let's say I make some changes and I want to render out another one. I'm happy with all the settings as they currently are. I don't want to go through that whole dialog and adjust them further. Instead of pressing Control Alt R, I can just press Alt R or Option R on the Mac.
Render to file name. New name.
And it will give us a dialog here ready straight to go into rendering, and the only thing we can change is the actual file name.
RC8 demo audio. Content selected. Edit text.
And it's giving it the same file name it did before. I'm just going to add
space audio
1 to the end of that.
1. OK. Default button. Press OK. /users output file. /mp3 elapsed 0. Reaper 6.
And it's finished again.
Render status. Launch file button. Show in Finder button. Close. Default button. Press RC8 demo audio.
And basically, it's as simple as that. So to bounce your project down to a single MP3 file or WAV file or whatever format you're choosing, simply Control Alt R to bring up your render dialog. Go through, make the changes, set the location, do whatever you need to do, and render the file. Okay, so that's how you can render out a mixdown from the master track of your project. Also in there we saw the option of actually rendering out some stems for the tracks. I just wanted to show you another way of doing that gives you a few other options as well. So into the File menu.
Menu bar, Apple, File, menu.
And down to Consolidate. So I'm just going to type CO.
Close, Consolidate /export tracks ellipsis. Consolidate /export track.
Now, this brings up a dialog that has a lot of the same options as the render dialog.
Dimmed, time selection, radio button, selected, entire project.
So we have some radio buttons across the top here, or the first couple of options that are entire project.
Dimmed, time selection, radio button.
Time selection.
Custom, radio button.
Or custom. So obviously, do you want to consolidate the entire project? The time selection you've got selected, I didn't have one, so you could see there it was dimmed. Or custom, which will allow you to put in the start and finish times directly.
Tracks, start, dimmed, 0, 0, end, 0, length, dimmed, 0, 2, selected, all, radio button.
And now we have an all button.
Selected, radio button.
Or selected button, and that is referring to the tracks. So do you want to consolidate
selected
all tracks?
Selected.
Or just the selected tracks?
Uncheck, ignore silent shorter than.
Ignore silent shorter than.
30, content selected, edit text.
And it's currently set to 30 seconds. So basically, let's say I set entire project and all tracks, it would render out each of those tracks. It would convert all the items, if there were multiple items, if there was MIDI, it would render each of the tracks out as a single file. With this ignore silence greater than option, let's say there was a track that just had a guitar solo on it 2 minutes into the track. If we tick this box, it will just render out a file that contains the guitar second. Because there was silence that was greater than 30 seconds, it will ignore all that part of the song and just render out the final bit. Now, that option is fine if you're using these in the same project. If you were doing this to give to somebody else, you probably, obviously you would want to check that box, you would want to leave it with all the silence so that all the tracks are the correct length.
Can cause multiple files per track.
So it gives you a warning there that it may cause multiple files per track. For example, if we had 2 guitar solos on our track that were more than 30 seconds apart, there would be 1 file created for each section, for each of those guitar solos, rather than just 1 file for each track.
Sample rate.
And
Auto. Combo box.
we can set sample rate,
Hertz. Channels. Auto. Pop-up button.
channels, 2, 4, 8, mono.
Resample mode.
So we have a resample mode. Basically, if resampling is required, how accurate do you want that to be? How much processor power do you want to dedicate to actually getting all of that right?
Good. 192 point sync. Pop-up button.
It's currently sitting there at 192 point sync.
Consolidation settings. If required. Consolidate to. FLAC. Pop-up button.
And here we have our file type. So consolidating to FLAC in my case.
FLAC encoding depth 24-bit.
And
Pop-up.
24-bit.
Data compression 5. Default. Pop-up. Export MIDI as.
We have an export MIDI section here as well.
Reference in .rpp file for export to Reaper only. Radio button.
Okay, so to Reaper projects only type file.
.mid file. Radio button.
Or a .mid file.
Output consolidated files to directory.
Where do you want these files to go?
Output. Browse button.
And we have a browse button to pick the location.
/user/Ionis.
And that's currently got the last destination I used in there.
Unchecked. Update project with consolidated files.
Now, update project with consolidated files. This is pretty cool. So let's say you have a number of different tracks, you know, some are AIF, some are WAV, some are FLAC, and you want to just tidy up your project. This is a really handy way of doing it as well. So if I check this box, this would swap out all the files in the project for these newly rendered FLAC versions, as they are in my settings here.
Checked. Save new project as.
And we can make it save it as a new project.
/users/browse button. Checked. Save current project before.
And we can optionally save the current project in its current state before we proceed with the render.
Process. Default button.
And there's our process button.
Cancel button.
At this stage though, I'm just going to cancel that one out.
Press RC.
As I mentioned, there's a lot of things you can do within the render dialog that you can also do within the consolidate/export dialogs. There is one important difference though. When you are rendering a track from the render dialog, you're baking in the effects that are on the track. You're creating stems. So if you have a reverb or an effect of any kind on that track, the stem that you render out will also have that reverb. With the export dialog, you're basically exporting that section of the original file as it is. So you may be resampling it and changing it to a different format when you export it, but basically you're exporting an exact copy of that original file. Anything you've done to the track volume or effects or anything like that that are placed on the track are not baked in to those files that you export through that dialog. Of course, any edits that you have on the track are included. So the Consolidate Export dialog is really for creating single tracks out of multiple bits. So the Consolidate Export track. So the Consolidate Export track dialog is really for creating a single file or multiple files, if you have the Ignore Silence tick box ticked, that are copies of the original files that are referenced by your Reaper project. Whereas the render dialog lets you render out stems, lets you render out those tracks with all the effects baked in. So quickly in summary, we used Control-Alt-R or Option-Command-R on the Mac to bring up our render dialog.
File. Render project to disk.
Once we have those settings set up the way we want, and we want to render out additional copies of the project, the Option-R is a handy one to use.
File. Render project. Using the most recent render settings with a new target file name.
Or of course Alt-R on Windows. And we also had a quick look in the consolidation dialog available under your file menu. Once again guys, I hope this has been helpful. Please do feel free to reach out to me if there's any particular requests you have for these tutorials in the future, and we'll see what we can do. Thanks a lot guys, and bye for now.